Okay, this is Chairman Mike McCoo of the Wellington Board of Finance, calling to order the special meeting of January 27th, 2022 at 6:35 PM. First order is seating alternates. And I had a request from Pete Tanaka to seat Jim in place of Pete. So I'll make a motion that we seat Jim for Pete. Can I get a second?
I'll second that.
All right, all in favor? I'll call the vote. Christina,
Yes.
Jeff,
Yeah, yes.
Joe,
Yes.
all right, and I'm voting yes as well. So Jim, you are now on and you are voting for the next motion. Since Stephanie is not here, I move to seat Lisa for Stephanie. Can I get a second?
Yeah, I'll second that.
All right, hang on. Okay, Jim, for the vote,
Yes.
Christina,
Yes.
Jeff,
Yes.
Joe,
Yes.
and I'm voting yes also. Okay, so Lisa, you are on.
Thank you.
Okay, again, as I said before, I'm doing minutes because we don't have a regular recording secretary. So if there are pauses, let me turn on my camera, that way you can see that I'm still alive. If there are pauses, I'm just trying to keep up with notes. So present to speak, public participation is desired and encouraged. Speakers will be limited to time and appropriateness of comments to maintain progress, stay on topic, and maintain decorum. So if anyone from the public wishes to speak, turn on your camera and wave your hand, or unmute your microphone and call out your name, and I will call on you. Okay, moving on to old business. Item 1, Wellington Fire Department 1 update on ambulance repairs and possible request for additional funding. I'm going to do a very quick overview of how we got to this point, particularly since we have 2 alternates seated tonight. Chief Moore requested a meeting with myself and First Selectwoman Wyszynski back in October, I believe. And we started some discussions about 2 topics that were affecting the fire department and their budget. And one of them being the condition of the current ambulance, which is approaching just about 7 years old and has 150,000 miles on it. There have been a couple other special meetings before tonight, and then we did discuss this at length at the Board of Finance meeting last week. At that time, the Board of Finance refreshed, and I want to refresh again on the fact that the Board of Finance does not have line item control over department budgets. The Board of Finance participates in a line item discussion, particularly in budget season, to help provide guidance to the departments, particularly in trying to establish what the Board of Finance feels the town can support for types of expenses and the amount of money. But again, in the end, the Board of Finance approves and sends to the townspeople for final approval a department level budget. What that means is that Chief Moore and his board have the right to spend, as long as they are within their budget, they have a right to spend it essentially on any of their line items and at any amount that they deem is the right thing to do. Where that can potentially come back to the Board of Finance is like the discussion we had last week, where there's the potential that an unexpected expense or a large expense might create a situation where the department needs to refill some of their budget. And we did not take a formal action with a motion last week. We provided a lot of discussion and some guidance that if the department moved ahead with the repair to the ambulance, which would be approximately $12,000 plus the repair to the rear axle, that we understood that was going to be a financial crunch, and that we were open to the conversation if they needed to refill their budget to cover that expense, and encourage the chief to move ahead and get that expense covered to get the ambulance back in service. After that meeting, after we had that meeting and the chief left with that sort of understanding, again, not a motion from us, just guidance. He then went back to his board and they had further discussions, and I think it would probably be appropriate. I'll first ask if any board members have any questions. And to the point that I just listed. And then we'll let Chief Moore take it from there. I think we have Stephanie joining. Steph, you want to do a sound check?
Sure. Can you hear me?
Yes. Okay. So you're going to take your seat now. We had seated Lisa for you. I just need to note the time. Hang on.
I don't mind deferring if you want to do that.
No, the state law is pretty clear. When the regular member returns, they automatically take their seat.
Okay.
Otherwise, I'd be happy to give you a bye, but not. Hang on.
Sorry.
Okay. Steph, I just did a recap of where we were on this issue up through last Thursday's meeting. And I had just asked the board if there are any questions up to the point that I had recapped where we were last Thursday. And then we're going to move on to let Chief Moore pick up from there.
Okay.
All right. I'm not seeing any questions. So Chief, you want to take it from that point?
Sure. One, thank you everybody for taking the time out to listen to us. We, as Chairman McCoo said, we did meet last Sunday night as our board to go over the ambulance. We felt it was before we agreed on the repairs to let our board make the decision rather than it being just myself or me and the president. So one of the things that we did do, there was a lot of questions that came out of our board meeting regarding timeline of repairs, whether we were to do a new motor compared to just fixing it. We were able, taking a couple of days, we were actually able to get those answers. So on Monday morning, the dealership was able to provide what the actual repairs, replacement would include. Mike, can I share that?
Yeah, I gave you permission to share, see if it'll work.
Okay. Can everybody see that?
Mm-hmm.
So this is what we were given Monday morning, was to install the new engine, turbo, fuel system, EGR cooler, glow plugs, coolant, crossover tubes, gaskets. Pretty much anything that is under the hood is getting replaced, including the alternator, idler pulleys. Pretty much anything that's under that hood is going to get replaced. The 36.2 is not including the refresh on the transmission. It's still 38. The transmission gets done by a different shop. The refresh on the transmission gets done by a different shop, so they didn't have that on this quote. But we thought it was important to at least bring that back to you guys because of the the extent or with what this is going to cover, knowing right now that we're probably going to have to keep this truck a minimum of another 2 years. Doing this work puts a 2-year warranty on everything under the hood. Anything that they touch will have a 2-year warranty from the factory. That's why we thought it was important to bring it back to you guys before we move forward. I did ask Donna to provide a summary of Fund 17 to see if Fund 17 could absorb this. Usually in past practice, if something like this has come up, we've usually used Fund 17 to cover it. And as of, 125, the fund balance is $291,691 in Fund 17.
Okay, thank you for that. Any questions on that Fund 17 balance first from board members? While that's fresh in our minds. I will comment that this has been a little bit of a topic of discussion. The chief and I talked about this a little bit on the phone. When we initially met, he and Erica and I met back in October. We discussed the possibility of tapping Fund 17 directly for these unexpected expenses. And unfortunately, the guidance went back and forth a little bit on whether that was appropriate, if there was an appropriate means to tap that fund during the year. And so Donna and Erica look back at the contract between the fire department and the town. And the way it's written is that Fund 17 is essentially, to boil it down, Fund 17 is approved through the normal budget process. So at one point it was being interpreted by Donna and Erica that we could not tap that fund mid-year because the only way to tap that fund would be during the normal budget process. But then that has changed at time to echo what the chief just said, that in the past we have tapped that fund during the year. I don't know what the right answer is to that, because our guidance, often comes from Donna and Erica, and we've had both answers. So I'm not sure. Regardless, I think we know there's more than one place that the funding could come from. And even if we decide we can't tap that funding mid-year, we could certainly address that in budget season, which we're starting in the next couple of weeks anyway. So I guess that's my thought on that. Any other board questions before we move on with the chief?
Can I just bring up one other point real
Sure.
quick, Mike? The only other reason that we really wanted to bring this to you guys is last week we were anticipating it being a very long delay getting a new motor. We've been told it's a 3-day difference between getting the new motor put in and getting the parts and just fixing it.
Mhm.
So that it's no longer, they were able to find a motor. It's not us waiting an extra month or month and a half to try to get this truck fixed. So that's why one of the other reasons.
Yeah. Okay. So as we were calling this meeting, I had been asked the question of, since we had a discussion last Thursday and it was about a week to do the repairs, wouldn't we almost have the ambulance back by now if they had just gone forward with the repairs? But I think your answer to that is that you needed to meet with your board and have more discussion. And that's what led
this, by the way, of our, internal policies, this was something that Ron and I did not feel comfortable just approving ourselves.
Mhm.
The price tag, we wanted our board to make that decision.
Okay.
The board had more questions, and then it was, once we got the answers to those questions is why we got asked to come back to you guys. I think the overall thought is if it's going to take $3 days longer, but we get the 2-year full warranty from the factory, that knowing the history of that truck and the motor work that's been done to it already, that it may be beneficial to just get the new motor put in it and the other work done.
Mhm. You have anything else to contribute before I go back to board discussion?
No,
Thank-
sir.
Okay. So I think for the board, I think we have a few options here. We could take a path similar to what we took last week, which is providing some guidance. Whether it's guidance that we think to stick with the repair we discussed last week, or guidance to move forward with this more expensive option that gives them the additional warranty factors and the comfort that they would like to do. Or we could make a motion to send something to the selectmen to call a town meeting for an extra allocation. I think those are probably what our 3 options are. We certainly, in the absence of having a written motion to work with, we certainly could encourage the chief to move forward on any of those paths. And then in the next regular meeting, do the motion. Because he has the money in his budget to move right now. It would just be a matter of how much he needs to refill his budget. So he could call tomorrow and he could tell the repair shop, get going on whichever option he and his department decides, or whichever option we encourage him to take, he can move forward. It's just a matter of if we want to give him guidance or not give him guidance. I guess I'll leave that up to board discussion.
Mike, all right, so we got the cost of the new motor. Alex, if you chime in here, what's the total cost of doing everything that you would like to really do to this truck? With the tranny refresh and
38,000.
Plus the rear axle needs to be done also, right,
Yeah,
Chief?
which that would come under as a regular repair. If we get the motor stuff done, that can come under as a regular repair.
But that's like $6,000, right?
But no, it's less than what we've been told is less than 2 for the
Okay,
rear end.
So it's about 40 or so total, if you roughly.
right.
Yeah, I think what,
Correct.
based on what the chief said
Correct.
last week, the repair option would be 12,000 plus about 2 for the axle.
Yep.
That was about a $14,000 thing we were talking about last week. And this would be essentially 36 for the engine, 2 for the transmission, 2 for the rear axle. Rough numbers, right?
Rough numbers, yeah. The 38 is solid for the the motor and the transmission. The rear end historically is less than 2, is what we're getting from them. But until they can tear it apart, we don't know that.
So I have a question about if we do this full throttle, motor and transmission, everything under the hood repair or replacement, what impact does that have on activating the purchase of a new ambulance? Does that put it out another year in the CIP plan, or how does that work?
It's something that we can discuss. I really don't know, because of what we're being told for timelines. We're still at least 2 years away before, even if we saw, we're able to get a commitment to order sometime in July or August. We're looking at July or August of 2024 before we'd actually get something, is what we're being told right now.
So a question to you probably, Mike, is the, at the time of order, is that when you've got to put whatever the nut is, what, 150,000, 300,000, whatever it is?
Well, I think what Donna would need and the department or any department would need is they would need to have something approved in a budget to allow them, even if they didn't have cash in hand, they would have to have an approved budget that would allow them to essentially make that commitment.
Right.
So if the department or any department was looking to purchase the next vehicle, they would have to at least have like the budget that's approved by the town, or a special, like an example of the dump truck we bought mid-year for Public Works, because it wasn't in budget season, we ended up doing a town meeting for that. So there would have to be some sort of administrative action to give them the go. They wouldn't necessarily need the money until sometimes, depending on how the lease is configured, you may not need any money until the unit arrives.
Right. Usually it's when we sign delivery of it. I know Donna in years past has done an early payment depending on what the interest rate has been. But usually it starts once we get the vehicle.
But it would still be the same impact as if we were paying cash for it, as far as the budget and the mill levy, right? If we have to have it in an approved budget, right?
Yes, it would be an expense even if it had not yet been expended.
That's what I was getting at. Thanks.
The only difference, Stephanie, would be is if this was a situation where, let's just say in July of this calendar year, we approved an expense that wouldn't be delivered until July of the next year, we could potentially hold off the money until the next budget year, but that's tricky because you haven't approved, the townspeople haven't approved that budget in the next year. So you have to be careful how you commit to something that's not in the budget year that people are approving. So in the end, you're probably right. It ends up being a levy no matter what.
The other question I have, Mike, is with it being off Fund 17 for the purchase, does that go towards the mill rate or the?
Well, it may not go directly to the mill rate. You know, that's sort of the advantage of working with Fund 17, because it is, at the moment you take money from Fund 17, it is essentially off budget. But you're also potentially taking money that would have gone somewhere else in the budget, like towards a capital expense.
Right.
Like, let's say, for example, so you have a lot of big expenses coming up. So you've been talking appropriately with us about increasing salary budgets to pay higher rates so you could get employees. You've talked about the possibility of a second ambulance, and you also have the potential to replace the ambulance that you're talking about repairing right now. So at some point, if all these things adds up and everyone says we should tap Fund 17 for that, we might run out of money in Fund 17.
Oh, I agree with you. At some point, Fund 17
Right.
can handle everything.
So eventually it might be the next year that it affects the taxpayers, but it wouldn't necessarily be in the initial year, because Fund 17 is essentially cash in the bank. But if you draw that down and then next year you can't pay leases or you can't buy the next thing from 17, you might have to buy it from somewhere else.
Right.
It just seems, the other point I would make is, it seems like if we're gonna do a $40,000 repair counting the rear axle, that we should at least get 2 years out of it before we're buying a new ambulance, because that's a much bigger outlay than we were talking about a week ago. So to me, it doesn't pay off unless we get something. We can't like continue to front load all these.
I don't necessarily disagree with you. My only hesitation is we don't know. We have the 2-year warranty. That's the biggest part of this, to make sure that it lasts for the 2 years. The only thing I don't know is what the market's going to do for us to try to find a truck. If we, is it going to be 3 years, 4 years before? I don't know what the delay is going to be once we finally order.
And Alex, is it still the plan to also purchase a used ambulance?
Correct. So yes. So the hope would be to still buy a second ambulance, which will hope delay us having to replace this one. I can't.
So when does that happen in this timeline? Like ideally?
In my idea, hopefully after the next ARPA meeting.
Oh, okay.
That's the next time we're talking about it, is at the ARPA committee.
And how much is that?
We had asked 80. The trucks that we've seen in the last few days that we've been shopping around have been anywhere from 30 to 60. For a used truck with low miles. But that doesn't, we would still need to outfit with some equipment and radios and stuff like that. So that's why we had talked about 80,000. And hopefully not spending that much.
So it sounds like it'd be really fast turnaround to get the ambulance, the current ambulance fixed, if you put the 40 into it, and it should last 2 years.
Yep.
And then also to purchase a used one that could happen very quickly. And then
I'm sorry, I broke up a little bit.
Oh, no, I'm just thinking of the timing of how, like, within a few months, you could have two older ambulances.
Correct. And try to delay it out a little bit longer.
Mm-hmm.
Regardless.
In that case, would you be okay with pushing the purchase of the new ambulance off? Because I
don't want to speak for the board, but probably.
Okay, yeah, it's just a lot all at once.
I agree with you.
I have a question.
Go ahead, Joe.
The need for a second ambulance. From what I've understood so far through these meetings is we service about, we go to about 800 calls per year.
900 or so, yeah.
So that's, just using generic math here, that's about 3 per day.
Yep.
So to have 2 ambulances in service, for that volume, it really doesn't make a lot of sense. And then speaking towards the repair versus replacement of the engine, if we're looking to buy 2 years of time roughly for this till we look at, whether we're purchasing a new unit or, a used unit in the marketplace, essentially we're trying to buy a few years. I think that's what, we've kind of gone around in a circle with. If we're buying 2 years, why wouldn't we want to buy the cheapest way? If we have an option for $12,000 to $14,000 to repair what we currently have, why would we put in, 40 to essentially accomplish the same goal? If this vehicle, let's just say that we don't have it in the budget in 2 years to purchase a new ambulance. We still have a 2-year guarantee on the rebuilt portion of the motor. All the parts that are going to be going into it for the 12 to 14,000 expenditure. So whether we spend 12,000 and we have a motor, or we spend 40,000 and we have a motor, let's say again, just being, we don't have it in the budget, and for 2 years, and we purchased this new ambulance, we traded against that, and we won one ambulance as we have a vehicle as a trade-in with a motor and a vehicle with a trade-in as a motor. There's really, no difference to the value of that vehicle when it comes trade-in time. So I just don't understand the need to spend the $40,000, I guess, for when we can do the same thing with $12,000 and still have the same 2-year guarantee, whichever path we go down.
Okay.
In both scenarios, we have a working vehicle with a motor.
Excuse me. Yep. You're right. It gets it back up and running. What we don't know is the rest of the stuff that's not getting replaced. Are we going to be in the same boat in 6 months? We have no idea.
Sure, but
That's why we were looking at if we had to tear it apart once, and if we can replace it all at once, does it save us in the long run? And that's why we wanted to have the discussion with you guys.
Sure. Appreciate it.
Other board members, questions, comments?
I guess further to Joe's point, if you go with the full motor rebuilt, a brand new motor, yeah, it's warranted for 2 years, but you're going to you should be able to get a hell of a lot more time out of it than only 2 years. So you should be prepared to keep it for more than 2 years if you do that.
Okay.
That's just my,
And I don't disagree with you. That would be, I have to bring back to the board. I don't have a.
I mean, all things being equal, you got 7 out of the original motor as it is. So
Correct. Yeah. Yep. And our board is going to meet right after you guys have your meeting so that we can try to get this thing squared away.
Christina?
Alex, do you have somewhere to store the second ambulance, and which one, when you have the used ambulance, which one is considered the one, which one is the
Number
main
one.
ambulance? Yeah.
So the one that we have currently would still be the primary ambulance. We would swap them out monthly or every other month to just try to save some time on the truck that we have.
Mm-hmm.
Plus, you don't want a truck just to sit there. We do have the space. It'll be we have a bay at the downtown or the south station down by the mill.
Okay.
That was clever how you almost called that downtown.
I did. Yeah, I know. Sorry.
That's big dreams.
Yeah,
Will
well.
do.
So yes, there is space to store it, and the overall goal is when we do have 2 trucks, you can spread out the replacement cycle of them because you're not running it as your only vehicle. The other part of it is when we see it, or have a major problem like this, we're not out of service. We're not trying to borrow a truck from another organization. That is having to borrow a truck from another organization is really the key of why we want a second ambulance. We have a truck from Stafford right now, and unfortunately it broke the other day. Now it comes back to who's responsible for fixing that. It's a lot of gray tape when we're all wearing Wellington uniforms and it says Stafford on the side of the truck.
Yeah. And what about the equipment and things that, I know, is it like a fire truck where there's specific equipment that works on one truck, but not necessarily on another? Would you
For
have to?
ambulances, no, that is the beautiful part. Not
Yeah.
really.
It's all the same. Well, that's good.
Yeah, that is a bonus.
Alex, could I ask questions, Jim?
Yes, sir.
Is that the mindset of your department, that if we do go with the more expensive replacement engine with the 2-year warranty and a backup secondary ambulance, would your department then be open to putting off a new ambulance purchase for another year or two if we're buying hopefully so much more longevity with 2 machines?
I would think so. Ron, my president's on, so I'm going to ask him his opinion, so it's not just myself.
Because I think financially that would make sense if by spending the 40K and still considering a backup machine, we've got 2 good machines that potentially are going to last 4 to 5 years instead of 2 years. Financially, that would make sense to me. But if we're still gung-ho and planning on ordering a brand new ambulance for 2024, maybe we should cheap this out, for the next 2 years. So that's my input.
If you don't mind, I'm going to have Ron just give his 2 cents. Ron Ganek is our president.
Yeah, we would be amenable to that, because we're spending that kind of money. We're all taxpayers here. I don't see it being an issue. Like I said, like Alex said, we're meeting directly after this meeting to put this issue to bed so we can call the dealer and pull the trigger one way or the other.
Good.
Just, this option originally was, we were talking months before we were going to get an engine, and it turned out we can get one in a week. So we just want to present this information so we can all make an informed decision. And there's no guarantee that we're going to get that second ambulance either, used one, because they're very hard to come by. Right now, there's nothing in the area. And if we go out of state, there's regulations in the state of Connecticut that are different from other states, that they may not be as stringent as ours. And that ambulance would require additional work to make it work in the state of Connecticut and be legal and get it passed by EMS.
Right, I understand. And that's the other side of the equation. As far as spending 40K on a repair, maybe we need to spend that 40K because we may not find a decent used ambulance, and we're still planning on a brand new machine 2 years from now. So you want a good, reliable 2-year ambulance or more, 3-year ambulance, because we're going directly to a brand new machine and not an interim backup machine.
Correct. Yeah, we'd still have the normal maintenance issues of brakes and tires, and
Right.
just like if we bought a new ambulance or not, suspension or whatever repairs would come up.
Okay, I think that answers it. You would consider putting off the new ambulance if we went this route, and we may put off the used ambulance if you can't find one anyway, and just go directly to ordering a new one that wouldn't be delivered for 2 years.
Because we've held off for a year on ordering a new ambulance just to let the fund build up a little bit. So it's kind of biting us, but we didn't plan on COVID and all its fallout.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, any other board questions for President Gantick or Chief Moore?
I do, yes.
Go ahead, Joe.
If the end goal is to acquire a new ambulance, then I mean, I just keep looking at this here. I'm writing, my own notes here. If we took the $14,000 repair now, rode that out for the 2 years we need until the new ambulance is available and ready to us, we were sitting on an asset that's probably worth, I don't know, I'm just going to use ballpark numbers in 2 years. Let's say $40,000 as it currently sits. So if we don't purchase a used ambulance, that's an $80,000 savings. The difference between the 14,000 and the 40 is another 26. So at that point, we have $106,000 we just saved towards the new ambulance. Plus, we have a $40,000 asset that we're rolling around with. So we're at almost $150,000. That money that we saved, in addition, and purchases we didn't make, towards the new ambulance. In a perfect world, if we had this brand new ambulance, we wouldn't need a second ambulance, because we'd have a brand new, it's a brand new vehicle, all new parts. So we should get, reasonably 7 years out of that vehicle. Just assuming that we've got the same lifespan, roughly out of this one. It just seems like if, to buy the 2 years of time as inexpensively as possible makes the most sense. Because our asset, whether we put this new $40,000 motor in this vehicle, in 2 years, it's still going to be worth $40,000 with a motor, versus we put $14,000 in it in 2 years, it's still going to be worth $40,000 with a motor. So there's really no difference aside from what we spend today. And if that money can be reappropriated towards the purchase of the new in a few years, I mean, it just looks like that would be the best avenue to go. And again, and if I'm wrong, please, anybody speak up. Like I said, I'm kind of new to this. So, but it's just, looking at basic math, it just seems like it makes the most sense to buy the time.
Any other board discussion on this? Does anyone want to take action? Do we want to, so again, refreshing where we were last was we had suggested that the chief move forward with the repair, and if he needed money to backfill the budget, we would certainly entertain him coming back to us. Things have changed since then. They would prefer the $40,000 option. So they're giving us the heads up that that's the path they would like to take. Do we want to issue new instructions? Do you want to stick with where we were? Obviously, Chief, you can always come back anyway. Like we can't necessarily do something that would preclude you from coming back. So I guess I'm looking to see if there's any action board members want to take. Obviously, we can expect the chief to be coming back if they choose to take the 38,000 plus rear axle route, whether that becomes a 38,000 or a 40,000, or whether they say they need to come back for 25,000. We certainly can expect that we're going to hear back from him if they take the more expensive repair option with the fresh motor. Steph, are you talking?
I was sneezing before.
Oh, okay.
I guess if we're going to take the more expensive repair option or replace engine and transmission replacement, right?
Engine replacement, transmission
refresh. Yeah. I would really want to see something from that, because we've been talking about all the, like the three spokes of what the fire department is talking about now really would, if all three of those are done, it really puts Fund 17 in Dutch and other things. It's not smart spending. I don't want to look back on this series of decisions and go, whoa, we up this, we up this, we up this, we took the highest estimate on all these. I don't want to feel like we said yes to one of the spokes without kind of being assured to some degree. For instance, we go with the expensive repair now, we put out the new ambulance purchase for 4 or 5 years from now. And then, you know, the used one, which is the second one, I understand it's a backup, but it's in play a little bit because of ARPA money and other factors. You know, that maybe is in the to be determined set, but, you know, I just want to feel like there's some thought to, this may be the smartest move, what they're bringing to the table now. But if so, I just want to feel like there's something astute about that financial decision for the town.
So what I'm getting so far, looking for a little consensus or inspiration from the board, is what I'm getting so far is that we're of the understanding that the department can do what they feel is the right thing to do. And we're concerned about what the total impact of all these different things are that are in the air. Are we turning that into any action, or are we just agreeing that we're concerned about it and we'll take official action if and when the chief comes back to us?
I think the second option is where we are. Because Alex, did you say you still need to talk with your board and did I hear that you still had to talk to them a little bit more?
Yep, so our board is meeting right after this meeting. Just to decide, you know, it's primarily for them to give the green light of whatever you guys, you know, we were hoping to get some direction of what you guys were more comfortable with. Because we know at some point we're gonna have to come back with either one of the repairs. So we've been really trying hard to make sure that you guys are up to speed as to what's going on. That's why we wanted to meet before our board, meet with you guys and then our board decide after that. To just touch on Stephanie's point really quick, in my opinion, if we replace everything, I don't see why this truck can't be held out longer with a new motor. But ultimately that's up to the board. I can't make that decision myself. That's where it's,
Chief, would you like me to take a poll of the board members tonight? It would be non-binding. It would not be a motion to see if they're
correct, and I'm okay with that.
If their preference was the $12,000 repair versus the $38,000 repair. Are you okay with us trying that?
Yes, sir.
I agree with that.
I think the future game plan kind of would weigh into way I would perceive this. If we were going to be seeking a brand new ambulance in 2 years, then I would lean towards the cheapest possible avenue today. If we would be keeping this ambulance with the new motor, if we put the new motor in, and we'd be keeping that now in service for 5-6 years, and now at that point the new ambulance disappears for 4 or 5 years or whatever until we revisit this, it would, I guess, what we would plan on doing in 2 years would impact which way I would go today.
So that's a pretty fair point, Joe. Unfortunately, we can't really act on that because those things are not at hand.
Correct.
Point.
Correct.
So if you're willing to participate in the poll, you can say what you feel is the right thing at this point. Sure. You can abstain from the poll if you want. It's not binding anyway.
Right. Okay.
But I think I'm kind of saying the same thing Joe is in another way, aren't I?
Yeah.
I mean,
yes.
I'm saying,
yes.
It can't be all three big things.
My vote is to agree with Joe. And I don't even know what the question is.
So what you're saying, what you're saying is you prefer the smaller repair if you think we also are doing the second ambulance and the new ambulance in the next couple of years. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. Just knowing that Alex can't can't know until he talks with his board, like what everyone is truly comfortable with. So basically, I think the guidance, it sounds to me like the guidance is, if your board's comfortable with pushing off the purchase of the new ambulance for a couple or few years, do the 40 repair. But if not, then do the cheaper one.
And I agree with you as well. That was my point to Alex, that can we, by spending 40K, put off that new purchase for a couple more years, or put off the purchase of the backup ambulance altogether, and just wait for a new one to come in 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, whatever. But what is the benefit to spending the 40K? So we're in effect, we're all agreeing with Joe, I think. We need to know, yeah, what the choices are. I'm not opposed to spending the 40K if that helps us either put off the used machine or further out the timeline for the purchase of the new one. I think we all want a good, reliable ambulance for our town.
I just want to be, I think we do all want that. I just want to be specific though about this. I'm looking for more of a 2
And I
year,
actually think,
if we go with the expensive one. If we go with the expensive
agree.
repair, a couple of years, 3 years isn't enough. I mean, I think it needs to go at least 4, 5, 6, that kind of thing. That's how I feel about it. Christina's point, I think, is, Alex doesn't know what his board is going to feel like. So if they kind of end up saying, no, we want the newer ambulance sooner, then I want the cheaper repair. So I agree with Joe too.
So I want to get to Jeff.
I think that gives Ron and I some really good guidance.
Okay, Chief, you got kind of cut off there. Were you saying that you're just looking for guidance? Is that what you said?
Yeah, and I think that actually gives Ron and I some good guidance to go back to our board
Okay.
with what
Jeff,
Joe,
do you-
Christina, and Stephanie have said.
Okay. So Joe, Jim, Steph, and Christina all kind of are on that same line. Jeff, do you want to comment on this at all?
Yeah, it seems like they want to have 2 trucks anyway, so do the cheap repair on this one. We'll use the Biden bucks on something used, and then you bang around on both of those for, I bet you get 5 years. How's that? Then at the end, you trade them both in for something nice and brand shiny new.
Okay.
I mean,
That's another option.
Chief, out of respect for some of the history here, I'm going to abstain from expressing an opinion on this.
You chicken. Just
I'm
kidding.
trying to, just like my instructions for present to speak, I'm trying to maintain decorum. All right, board members, do we want to take any more action on this? Are we done providing guidance?
I feel like we've provided guidance.
I agree.
Okay, then that concludes old business, unless you have anything else, Chief or President Gantick? No? Okay.
Thank you all.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thank you.
Guys, both.
That's the guidance that we were looking for.
Correspondence you all have. One more time round for present to speak. Is there anyone who would like to speak from the rest of the people on this call? Wave your hand if you're on camera, or unmute and call out your name. All right, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Steph, seconded by Christina. Hang on. Okay, all those in favor of adjournment, say aye and wave.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
All right, we're adjourned at 7:24. Thank you all.
Thank you.
you.
Later, bye.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks.